So from following on from my last video, I've played quite a few hours. I think I'm probably around 35 hours on the PTS for Unchained. And I just thought it would be a good idea to have a feedback video based on my experience on the PTS. Although, even with 35 hours in game, I obviously can't test out every aspect of the game because it's so big, so if you feel that there's anything else that could use feedback, go onto the forums and post it there so they can work on it. I will link you to the game feedback forum in the description, so have a look there if you do want to post anything. However, let's get straight stuck in with what I want to talk about first. The Diligence coin shop, I'm finding really hard to gauge how expensive or how cheap things are in there because we haven't had too long to play with it. So that's one of those things that I would want to give feedback on post-launch. However, the actual cash shop itself that you use credits for, that's something I'm finding a little bit more confusing, mainly just because of these three items. Even if you buy the most expensive pre-order pack, you would then still have to load your account with even more credits just to buy one of the cosmetic items. Now that's not so much of a big issue, I understand. They said on the last stream, I think it was Crowlin that said it, is they are using a business model that is trying to sell cosmetics to make money. Understandable and completely appreciated. However, if I've bought the most expensive pack and then I have to buy more credits, it just kind of feels a bit weird. Like you've just spent all that money on a pre-order, but then to get one cosmetic I need to put more on there. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not really a cosmetic buying kind of person, but for those of you out there that might be, if you'd spent £60.99 in pounds for the most expensive pre-order pack with 5,000 credits, and then you had to buy nearly another 1,000 credits to get one cosmetic, it would feel a little bit bizarre. If they stick with the legacy cost of credits, which is what I'm assuming they will do, it will cost you another £3.99 to get the right amount of credits for any of the three cosmetics that I've shown you. And when there's such little difference in price, this is why I find it weird. But again, this is just my opinion. Now, more gameplay related feedback, I want to talk about the crime system. Now, it was something that was discussed last stream, and it was something that, again, I get it's hard for them to balance, but I honestly think the crime system at the minute is just really bizarre, and I'm going to use two examples that will frequently happen within this game. Someone plants some trees, or they plant some crops in an area where they have no land and they have paid no taxes. That then grows and fully matures, someone comes along and then chops down the tree or gathers the crops. That person then gets reported and gets crime points to the point where they can actually be imprisoned. They then get found guilty and they spend nearly 3 hours in prison or spend loads of labour to get back out. One side of the coin says that that is free loot because they didn't pay the taxes for it, and the opposite side of the coin says that was their item to take and nobody else should take it. And my view is basically the first side, because you haven't paid the taxes for that. If you wanted to make sure that you didn't lose it, maybe you should have turned up when it actually matured. And I actually got sent to prison the other day for nearly 300 minutes, and that was for maybe 8 trees and a couple of crops, which is actually more than if I'd murdered someone. The other example for this is you are out on the open sea, someone jumps off their boat, starts lowering your sail constantly, but they're not flagging up, they're not attacking you. They're on your sail, just constantly lowering it every time you raise it. You have two options. You sit there and just fight with them until they get bored, or B, you kill them and move on like you should do. The downside to that is, if you do kill them, they will come back, they will report you, and then you will have a 100-minute stay in prison if they find you guilty. The system that I mentioned on my last video I think would benefit both of these situations. The more plants and crops you pick up that weren't yours, in quotation marks, you should get more crime points. The same for if you kill people. If you kill the same person over and over and over, you're obviously trolling them, so you would get more crime points the more you kill the same person. My personal opinion is that the crime points you get for doing stuff is high. The base of it is too high. I think the more you do it, it should increase, but I think the base rate for killing one person or for picking up a crop is too high. Because at this point, if people wanted to contest a world boss or something like that against another guild, but the other guild were protected, so you couldn't do a dominion, you have to purple up. And then you'd spend a nice little guild experience time in jail for essentially just doing content. I really hope that this is something that the Gamigo will eventually do something about, but for now I think they're kind of just playing it safe. There are a few things that I want to make a quick mention of, but I don't want to go into too much because they've been talked to quite a lot. As I just mentioned, the peace treaty system seems to be a little bit abusable, and I think there should be a cooldown on it once you've used it enough times. Something someone mentioned on the subreddit, and that I have actually noticed as well, is all the trees at the moment are popping up as saplings around the world, all the randomly generated ones, and usually they were between sapling and fully matured, somewhere in between. So I'm not really sure if that is intentional or not. Something I want to talk about now though is the dungeons and armour and weapon crafting. Now for anyone who played pre-Hiram, you will know exactly what I mean when I say abyssal crystal. You used to have to group up with small parties, do dungeons, and gain abyssal crystals, or abyssal shards. I can't remember the exact words, but they were something along those lines. And the dungeon gear throughout the game was actually pretty decent all the way up to Labyrinth, and Labyrinth was just a hellhole. But even if you didn't do dungeons, you could always make your own weapons and armour, and they would still turn out pretty decent. Since the addition of Hiram gear, it feels very much like you either get Hiram gear, library gear, or that's it. It feels very polarised in the way that you actually gain gear. And as much as I do agree, times change, I feel that they should at least be viable for part of the game. Like at the moment it just feels like you just rush to Hiram and that's it. And as much as some people might not be a fan of dungeons, it's always good to have a little bit of content to do now and again that you don't do too often. Plus if it's only Hiram gear and a very minor selection of other gear, it puts quite a lot of the houses you can get to waste, because why would you upgrade to an armourer's house when people will never use the armour that you make? It's something that I really hope Gumigo will have a chat to with Excel about, because Excel really need to have a step back and think, you know what, actually there was a huge selection of stuff people used to be able to wear, even in 4.5, and now there's really not that much. It's very much a consolidated amount of armour that you would actually think to use. You can technically use any armour in the game, but you would be putting yourself at a disadvantage essentially, especially in late game. But anyway, I think that's enough time spent on that topic, and I'm pretty sure you get the gist of my opinion. The only other thing I really have an opinion about is the whole trading safe area things that I mentioned on the previous video as well. I don't think the traders should have safe zones, especially if you're going to an enemy nation island. If you're protected on the enemy nation island, it's not really enemy, is it? And just to give you an example, the first time I ever played the game, the quest to get, I think it was the 8x8, you had to travel a trade pack to the enemy island and hand it in. Guess what? I died and I had to do the quest again. And even as a new player, that's just a learning curve. In a game like this where it's meant to be a sandbox, the learning curve is probably going to be pretty steep. I don't think dumbing the game down for anybody who's new is going to do the game any favours in the long run. But throughout this week I will probably keep testing on the PTS just to try and get a firmer grasp on stuff, because as I said I am a returning player, but it is feeling a lot more solid now, and I was actually able to log on last night even in peak time, which has not happened the entire week, so they're clearly making good progress on the server issues. But that's pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to kind of go over some of the bigger issues that I've noticed in the game. And as I said earlier, if there's something you think requires feedback, go onto the forums and I'll link you in the description if you don't know where to find it, and you can tell them exactly what you think needs changing. But that's the end of this video, and I hope to see you here for the next one.